Ask someone from elsewhere in Canada to define Southwest Saskatchewan, and they will say flat, boring, and even empty. It is the stereotypical view of the province, and the Southwest is part of that view. What is it really? What defines Southwest Saskatchewan, and can it even be defined? Is it the land of wheat, or the land of deep valleys? Is it a land of ranching, or a land of innovation and change? How would someone who lives here define it?
Years ago, when I first joined the Air Force and said I was from Saskatchewan, that flat piece of land, people only saw Saskatchewan as the area from Regina west. And you tell people there's 100,000 lakes in Saskatchewan, and they go, "What? I didn't know that." I said, "Yeah, the north has 100,000 lakes, and the rolling hills of the south." And people are now starting to understand that because Saskatchewan's getting more well known throughout the country, and people are doing a little bit more of their own homework, especially when they want to move here to work.
They travel the #1 highway and they think flat. But they don't seem to realize that the reason the #1 highway was built there is because it's flat. But you go half an hour in either direction and it is not flat. It's a Saskatchewan you wouldn't expect.
The entire constituency of Cypress Hills is filled with interesting geological and topographical features. And the contrast between those two specific natural features, the most beautiful greenery and park-like setting of Cypress Park, and then sand dunes that distance away, really speaks to the immense differences of natural phenomenon that exist in this part of the constituency.
The purpose of this film was to look at the area of Southwest Saskatchewan, from its deep history to its amazing present. To show that Southwest Saskatchewan is anything but flat, and it is populated by an amazing group of individuals, populating a diverse array of towns. It is a landscape that is constantly changing, and its industries go well beyond agriculture. This film is meant to give a voice to the history, people, and places of a unique slab of Canada. Saskatchewan may have become a province just over a century ago, but the area's history goes back much further. 2 billion years ago, Saskatchewan and part of Manitoba was part of its own continent, the Churchill continent, separated by a small ocean from the Superior continent. 1.8 billion years ago, Those two continents collided and have been joined ever since. The lower part of Saskatchewan in the southwest region was covered by a shallow sea hundreds of millions of years ago. From 144 million to 66 million years ago, the area began to dry up and the inland sea drained. Today, many dinosaur species have been found in the region, including one of the most intact skeletons of a T-Rex ever found and now on display at the T-Rex Center in Eastend. Eventually, the ice ages came and the entire region was covered by great slabs of ice stretching far into the sky. These glacial ice sheets would have a huge impact on the region. From large glacier rocks deposited during the retreats of the glaciers, to the immense valleys carved out by the rushing water of the glacial melt. With the glacial melt came the First Nations people, who began populating the region thousands of years ago. Native people reached the area roughly 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, following the bison as the great herds moved through the region. Their presence is still felt today, with artifacts left throughout the region. One of the most important sites for the early native people is located near St. Vincent, where petroglyphs dating back hundreds of years can be found. The native people would occupy this region for thousands of years, moving with the herds and living off what the land provided them. Things began to change in 1670, when King Charles II of England granted all the lands that drain into the Hudson Bay to the Hudson Bay Company. This brought the French-Canadian voyageurs into the region, along with European and American fur traders throughout the 18th century and into the 19th century. The fur trade industry was incredibly lucrative for the entire area of the Northwest Territories. That included what would one day be Saskatchewan. As the Europeans came in, trading furs, and homesteaders came in setting up communities, the First Nation people were pushed farther and farther out of their traditional lands. The age of immigration began as the Canadian Pacific Railway came through. The Continental Railroad went through the small village of Pile o' Bones in 1882, and by 1903, the population of this community had increased to city status thanks to the railroad. The city, by that time, was known as Regina. Due to the increased amount of people arriving, Saskatchewan and Alberta were granted provincial status in 1905, with Regina as the capital city. With the railroad and the Homestead Act, communities sprang up throughout southwest Saskatchewan, often 10 to 12 miles apart. Under the Homestead Act, immigrants could have 160 acres of farmland if they settled there for as little as $10. Immigrants came from throughout the world, many settling in the southwest region. English farmers settled in a variety of communities, while French farmers and homesteaders settled in communities that today still bear French names and have a strong French influence. German and English settlers made up the majority of settlers in those early days, helping to create a diverse makeup of backgrounds. From the turn of the century onwards, southwest Saskatchewan would continue to change and grow, and the communities would continue to thrive. Today, those communities make up the character, the life, and the culture of southwest Saskatchewan.
This old wagon, this was a grain wagon that had a dump on the bottom of it. You pulled a lever and it dumped when it got to the elevator. And that was my grandpa on my mom's side. That was his grain wagon. That was his old grain wagon. And so the people that owned it, the land, that was sitting in their yard, and when they were cleaning up the yard, they said, if there's anything here, you can come and get it. So Shannon and I went over with our old truck one day and picked it up, and she's kind of turned that into a thing that looks pretty cool in the summer too, because the plants grow all over it. Bought this quarter from my dad when we came home, and then Uncle Joe owned the quarter that's adjacent to it over there. So this is the original old farmyard starting right here. And then my dad built all of these granaries. When he came home, he took the School of Agriculture, came home, and then he started building all the wooden bins. And then as we've added on all the steel bins as time has gone along, we've kept all these for storage. So it's kind of a, I like it like that. I'm not sure if everybody would, but I like the idea that the old and the new are still there. Although we did quit putting money into paint eventually. We used to paint like every third year, and it was $1,500 a year and lots of work. So we said, well, it's just going to have to fall apart. So, and this was the site of the original yard that my grandpa and my grandma developed, starting in the mid-teens. I think he started building his house. It got built in about 4 different places and about 4 different sort of add-ons too. And this was the basement right there, so that I don't fill that hole in because it helps remind me of where he actually got started. And then he and Grandma planted those little trees, and their garden was back in there where we've got that tent for the boat. And this was the basement of the old house.
Really?
And I remember this. Dad actually, it sort of fell apart, and he took it down in the late 50s. So I remember the old house being here.
So
and
there's some treasures under there.
I think there probably are, yeah. And I remember as a kid spending time in the backyard over there, which was really nice, because it was like on a day like today, of course, it was beautiful just to be there and hearing the sounds. When my grandpa started farming in 1906, he had 2 teams of horses. Well, not right away, but he ended up with 2 teams of horses. I think there was 6 in each team, and they pulled a plow that was 4 feet wide. And now on our little farm here, we have one of the smaller drills, and it's 40 feet wide. So just to, it's 10 times things, and not only that, we go 3 times as fast, and we have things 10 times as wide. So just for someone that isn't sort of in touch with what's been happening with farming over the last 100 years, that gives a pretty good picture of what it's been like. As we were talking about earlier when we were on our little walk, we were talking about how it was such hard work in those days, and my grandpa's comment to me that, well, maybe it was hard work, but at the end, when the horses got tired, then we got to quit. Whereas with the advent of tractors and and bigger equipment and more comfortable equipment, and which has become, as time has gone on, the equipment is comfortable, but if the tractor doesn't get tired, it may break down, but it doesn't get tired, and so it can go as long as you possibly can. And we tend to have stress of a different nature, I think, in farming today than what my grandpa did. It was mainly physical stress and physical fatigue that you felt, where for many farmers, not us so much anymore because we're farming in a smaller kind of way, but certainly for the young people that are driving equipment that goes 20 miles an hour in the field, and they're doing that for 14 and 16 and 18 hours a day, there's that's hard work too. So, and very stressful. So.
Like when we first came home, we bought land at very high interest rates, so we needed to work off the farm. So it was hard work because we both had jobs as off the farm. We had 3 kids that were involved in a lot of activities, and then we got cows as well as the grain farming, and our days were long, and it was different for sure than what Steve's grandfather did, and his dad, because they didn't work off the farm. So.
But originally the idea was that if someone ever stayed home to farm, then so would be another yard that they could develop. And if they didn't, in my retirement, I was going to grow asparagus here. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think I've got that much ambition anymore. I do like the prairie. I like to be able to see when I've know people from many different places, and a lot of people think that it's boring driving across Saskatchewan or across the prairies because there's nothing to see, and I guess I've always felt that driving across the prairies I could see everything. Whereas when I'm in the mountains and driving through the forest, I feel like I can't see anything. The trees are in the way. As much as I love trees to block the wind, when I'm traveling, to me they seem to be in the way. It's a really nice place to sit and listen to the birds.
Is it ever?
Yeah.
It's nice in here.
Yeah.
Nice morning coffees and things like that.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Just a nice little breeze going through, so you can sit here in comfort in the afternoon.
That's really nice. And with all the birds coming in, you guys do a lot of bird watching?
Yeah, I love the birds.
Yeah.
I really do, yeah.
More and more. I can't say we were all that interested earlier on, but as the years go by, which is true of most people I know, that as they age, they tend to get more interested in birds. I'm not sure why, but it's true of us too. So, yeah.
Gravelberg mustard was developed in 2011. I bought the business 3 years ago. And so what Gravelberg mustard is a line of gourmet mustards here in Saskatchewan. 80% of mustard grown in Canada is actually grown in Saskatchewan, and 40 to 50% of the world's mustard is grown here in Saskatchewan. So I figure why not use that resource that we have here and put Saskatchewan on the map. New flavors is sometimes it's sleepless nights, it just kind of hits me. Other times it is people that come up to me and say, hey, you should make this type of flavoring, or yeah. And then from that point, I just bring it into the food center, we do an analysis of it, and we start the process. Of course, it's trial and error in the kitchen as well, and we get that help from the food center just to better it, to be shelf ready for the consumers. So pricing, I approve it, and away you go. And with being approved that way, not only are you selling my product, but I'm also advertising for you as well on my website, because I will list a list of all of the vendors that carry my product. So it's easier for some of my clients to search where to go and get it, right? So everything's on the website. Well, hopefully in the future, I want to be across Canada. I want to be exporting out of country, and having that distributor on board with me to help me do that, because at the moment it is just myself that does the business, right? So it's anything from filling the jars to labeling the jars to shipping it out, right? So having that distributor would be huge, and exporting out and just making people aware of what we have here in Canada as such a huge resource, and using that and being proud of that.
I was born at Pipe Pot, or in between, halfway between Pipe Pot and Maple Creek, and the Pipe Pot Maple Creek's been our hometown ever since. I never went anywhere until I got in the Army, and I went halfway around the world. Joined up in 41, and we were sworn in on January the 2nd or 6th on 42. And then I got out in 46, spring of 46. And then I went to work for Henry's Bakery in Maple Creek. And I worked there until he sold out to McGowan's, and then I worked for Shed Doe for a year or so there when they built that overpass up there by Maple Creek. And then 56 I come to Gull Lake, and I've been here ever since. Maple Creek was the baker right away as soon as I got out. So there I was, 3 years before I could handle it by myself.
Grasslands is just, I once was in there in March, and to think that I was probably one of the only people in a national park in Canada, and the silence was literally deafening. I honestly felt like somebody had put their hands over my ears because it was so quiet. And the stillness and the beauty is just magnificent. I like the West Block. I'm a big fan of the West Block, again, because I like those places where you can get away from it all. Again, no services, no power, no water, but amazing peace, and you get such a great view of the sky, and that's why it's a dark sky preserve in there, and you get such an amazing view. The Dark Sky Preserve is an area that we have 2 of them in the Cypress Hills destination area. Both Grasslands and the Cypress Hills Interprovincial Park are Dark Sky Preserves, and basically it means that they are adhering to regulations to not have as much light go up into the dark sky so that you can see stars and everything else. There's so much to discover. It's just, if you're an explorer, if you like to find those little places that nobody ever thought, if you like to find those restaurants that you would never believe in a million years or in a small town, if you like to find those little hiking spots that you're probably one of only 10 people that might walk that year, this is the area for you.
I was thinking on my drive out here today that when the railroads were built in the late 1800s, they were built in the sort of the flattest, most accessible, easiest to build parts of the province. But just off those, just off the highway or just off the railroad are some of the best parts of the province, and from a tourism perspective, especially in the southwest. So yeah, I do think it's overlooked. I think people in Saskatchewan are starting to catch on. We know that we're seeing a lot more people coming from Regina and Saskatoon, for example, and are catching on. There's a lot to do in the southwest. Are there a number, or is there a treasure trove of places to visit in the southwest? Absolutely. The southwest has more hidden gems and more neat little places, I think, than probably any other part of the province. Every town, it seems, has something going on and something interesting. I know Gull Lake, the theater here, is very interesting. I just heard about an old shoe repair shop and some plans for that, or some potential plans for that, got me really excited. It sounds funny from a tourism perspective, but if that turns into a tourism business and ties in with the old theater here, that'll be beautiful. Southwest Saskatchewan, apart from the rest of Saskatchewan, I think as a starting point, the landscapes are very different here. I touched on the fact that whether it's the Cypress Hills, whether it's the Sandhills, whether it's the South Saskatchewan River Valley, whether it's Grasslands National Park, whether it's the Frenchman River Valley, there's some very unique landscapes here, and rolling countryside and surprising valleys and so on.
Now on to another tried and true system for prediction. Gus Wickstrom predicts the weather using pig's spleen. We reached him in Tompkins, Saskatchewan. Hi, Gus.
Hello, hello.
So what is the spleen telling you?
Oh, it's just that Gus guy again.
Yeah, there he is. He's doing it again. Then you can put your cap on like that and away you go. But anyhow, it takes about 3 weeks before you start to get hair up there. Some people say, how come I don't have much? But I was really, really bald once. No hair at all. And you can see that it's coming in around the outsides. So it is working. So it's a proof right there that it does work. So
and my uncle Gus was a very good pig spleen prognosticator, and he became quite famous. He passed away, I think it was 2006, and the family wanted somebody to take on to keep the sort of the ritual going. So I was, I guess, sort of the obvious choice. One time we were at a little bit of a competition where my uncle was doing predictions with a whole bunch of other weather forecasters. And that was one of the questions they asked him, was who was going to take it over when he was done. And he sort of looked at me and said, my nephew will. So, and I didn't think much of it at the time, but it came true. So
This retired farmer from the Tompkins area has been forecasting in this unusual manner for over 20 years. Wickstrom says he's faced a few challenges along the way getting the tools he needs for his hobby.
I knew about it long before, but I had trouble getting spleens, until Carmichael Colony came along, which were butchering big, large hogs, which I needed, and I couldn't seem to find any sort of before that because younger people sort of don't raise hogs like they used to.
He started, my grandfather used to do it, sort of almost sort of jokingly, I guess, when they would butcher a pig. And when they butchered the pig, they would go through, they would prepare all the meat, and then at the end they would look at the pig spleen and sort of do it as just something that they saw their parents doing, so they just sort of did it as a bit of a joke. Well, my uncle saw this and he sort of kept it in the back of his mind, and then when he retired from farming, he decided, well, he was going to try it out, and he did, and he became quite famous for doing it. So to do it, you look at a whole bunch of different spleens and see if there's any sort of common trends between them. You divide each one into 6 pieces and look at the fat deposits and the texture and the color and things like that. My uncle would go so far as to bite into it to see how firm it was, that sort of thing. And so what I do is I do a prediction. I look at probably 5 or 6 different spleens and then see if there's any commonalities, and then pick the one which is going to be used for that year.
Traveling on the Trans-Canada through southwest Saskatchewan, you can't expect to see much. Being the flattest area of the southwest, the Trans-Canada naturally went along the easiest, least complex path. Since most people travel on the Trans-Canada through Saskatchewan, they never see these spots that are off the beaten path. They never see the wonders that exist, only a short trip off the highway and into a countryside that is more varied than most provinces. We are going to take a journey through southwest Saskatchewan. We have traveled through time and learned its history. We have met its people. Now, it is time to see the places, from the natural wonders to the small communities that make southwest Saskatchewan so unique.
Gone to Cypress Park just because it's close. They go there because it's beautiful and it's unique, and it really draws people in. The First Nations people that lived in this area long before white settlers came thought the same of that formation, and they used it for spiritual events, for camping, and sort of as a getaway, a place where they could really recharge their batteries, and I think that we find it has the same value to our contemporary society.
Not true mountains. They are remnants of erosion of the tertiary plateau of sediment formed during the initial uplifting of the Rocky Mountains. This caused the entire plain to become elevated, making them the highest point between the Rocky Mountains and Labrador. Take Alberta and BC out of Canada, and Saskatchewan would have the highest point in the country. Rising to 1,468 meters, or 4,816 feet, the Cypress Hills actually rise 216 feet above the elevation of Banff. The elevated plain has also resulted in the Cypress Hills becoming an important drainage divide. Rivers coming out of the Cypress Hills drain both into the Hudson's Bay and into the Gulf of Mexico. Nearby in Eastend at the Dividing Springs Ranch, the water from the spring goes both south and north. The hills support an extensive forest and rare fescue grassland. The hills also share more of a connection with Montana and Wyoming in terms of flora than with the rest of Canada. The area also shares several flora and fauna with the Alberta mountain parks. Many species can be found in the park, including cougars. The Alberta side of the park was created in 1951, with the Saskatchewan side of the park being established in 1989, creating the Cypress Hills Interprovincial Park. One of the most popular tourist attractions in Saskatchewan, thousands of people come out to the park each year to camp, hike, canoe, and enjoy a unique ecosystem nestled only 25 minutes south of Maple Creek. We are going to move to the north now, near the town of Sceptre, where the Great Sandhills can be found. Stretching for 1,900 square kilometers, an area larger than Hong Kong and Singapore combined, the Sandhills are a unique feature of the Saskatchewan landscape. Rising out of nowhere, they dot the landscape, rising to over 20 meters high and covering several hectares of land. One of the largest sets of active sand dunes in all of Canada, the Sandhills are also home to the Great Sandhills Ecological Reserve. Created by the glaciers moving through thousands of years ago, the sand dunes are ever-changing due to the high winds in the area. While they seem to rise alone on the landscape, you can easily see other sand dunes nearby when standing on top of one. Situated 27 kilometers south of Sceptre and 149 kilometers northeast of Swift Current, the Sandhills are easy to get to, amazing to see, and a wonder to behold. Nearby, in Sceptre, you can also visit the Great Sandhills Museum and Interpretive Center. This museum, devoted to the Sandhills and the village of Sceptre, is situated in an old school that has been adapted to the purpose of preservation of history. Featuring fossils from the long-gone past, artifacts from Sceptre's early days, and plenty of information on the Sandhills, stepping through the museum is like stepping into the past as you tour through the town, literally created within the walls of the museum.
Saskatchewan, Canada, baby. And now,
Hazlet is a small community located 45 minutes northwest of Swift Current. We are a lively bunch out here. We have great volunteerism. And yeah, we have a couple great things that bring people here. We have an international program at our school. We have the first wind-powered rink facility in all of Canada, maybe the world. And we just do a lot of fun stuff here. Well, Hazlet is more like a family than a community, so we always all come together to do anything we put our minds to. So we've done big concerts and big projects where everyone comes together, and you can see it with our young students there. Everyone's proud to be from Hazlet. So if you can be in Germany or you can be in Australia, and if you ask someone where they're from, they won't say Canada, they'll say Hazlet. Well, Hazlet's a very safe, welcoming. We have all the essential services. You can really feel a part of a group here. And it's a very affordable lifestyle with a great school for kids and a great daycare and a great place to live. Well, I think we got our name out there as a place that, you know, everyone can feel welcome, and we've done lots of innovative things here, and I think people are excited to see what's next for this town. You know, there has been lots of places around us that are kind of dwindling and losing hope, and we've kind of just kept that hope with different projects that we're doing, you know, beautification of our community. We always do great things between the community and the school to keep everyone involved, and I guess just keeping the word out there. Like, we tell anyone we can about how great Hazlet is, and so the more people that know about us, the more chance there's someone that might want to consider living here, for whether it's the affordability, the great school, the amazing daycare, or, you know, the fun events that we have here. We have a lot of great events that we put on, including concerts, big Rough Rider parties. We have amazing regional park here where we do lots of fun outdoor activities. So, you know, there's something for everyone, and we're very family oriented.
It's a historical reenactment. We have two separate tours. We have the Chicago Connection. Now that's about gangsters, bootlegging, Al Capone's connections to Moose Jaw. And then we have the Passage to Fortune. Now that's the story of the early Chinese immigrants in Canada and their struggles to help build the country. It's very, very busy. In the summer, we have tours every 15 minutes from 10 in the morning to either 7 or 8 at night, depending on what it is. In the winter time, we do have our hours are a little shortened, but we're still open every day. We're busier around, you know, Christmas times, weekends, that sort of things. We get lots of bus tours come in, tour companies will come in, conventions, that sort of stuff in town. But just the general families, this is the time for them. I love both of them because they are very unique. They're different stories. I'm very fascinated. Growing up here, I always knew there was tunnels. You always knew about the connection with Chicago and the gangsters and the bootlegging. A couple months ago, Deidre Capone actually came here. It's Al Capone's great niece. And she went on the tour and we talked. We were being interviewed for a documentary about her great uncle. And that was really fascinating to actually meet a person who's a part of that history. As far as the Passage to Fortune, my father was a train engineer. So I always heard about the stories of the lines being built when they first opened up the country and the struggles and the sacrifices. So many men died building that. It's quite fascinating. It's amazing.
But certainly as times have progressed, it's changed into basically a service center for agriculture. That's for sure, and that's still our bread and butter, even if there's some other activities happening around. Just more recent things, and because I know you're thinking of tourism and this sort of thing, certainly the construction of the Canalta Hotel here has really opened up some new ventures for us, because now we have accommodations. The completion of our Prince of Wales Centre to be able to accommodate big events, and that combined with the Canalta adding those many rooms certainly has given the opportunity for us to look down the road of major events. Initially, the curling rink was on the north side of that block, and the rest of it was actually residential. And so it was actually the curling club, the strong leaders out of the curling club that were involved with the Assiniboia Civic Improvement Association, and they're the same group doing the new hockey arena now, but different people, but that same organization. I think their dream was that they would like to have a facility where they could host those events in their own facility, and then combine it with all the other things. So that group worked very, very hard. I got to commend them for it. They ran lotteries and bingos and you name it, and they were successful to build this beautiful facility. And I guess another area where we've made a move on, and that's with our museum. And I don't know whether you've been to the museum or not. And I would encourage you to go there, because what we did in this last year, we had Mr. Prentice had a safari collection of African animals that he hunted, and we've had it displayed in different buildings, and it never really had a permanent home. And this year we actually made a permanent home for it in a special room at the museum with a door, because some people aren't partial to see dead animals hanging on the wall, and some people are. And so really they go to the museum and they have that option to go into that collection. But it's a beautiful collection. It's been well displayed, and now it's got a permanent home. And I'm pretty happy with that. And the museum group and a couple of my counselors worked very hard for that to take place. So now the museum And also the Tourism Information Center was separate from the museum, and now we've actually made the museum our Tourist Information Center, the Prentice Safari Collection, and then the whole package is there. And so there's a fantastic antique car collection there, just unbelievable really. And then there's a historical part too. There's a boardwalk of what some businesses looked like back in the early 1900s when the town was first formed. Some pictures of the town just being built, and some of the buildings being moved in from Leeville and Jonesville and that kind of stuff. And then they got actually a big pictorial display of all the schools, all the country schools that were around. A picture of them, where, I know of schools. I even went to a country school here, and you can go through and there's my old school that I went to, which has been long gone, And so some good stuff, and another one, and I don't know whether you've noticed it, and that's the St. Victor petroglyphs. It's a provincial historical site, and I was just talking to Dave Monroe, who has spent years and years trying to save that, and now they finally have convinced the government to do a lot of support out there to save it because the hills were sliding and the rocks were falling, and some of those drawings were going to get lost forever. And over the years, because it wasn't secured, people were going in and carving into the walls and really doing a lot of damage, And so now there's some good plans for that, and so I'm hoping that will materialize, and it'll just be one more spot that you can promote if you want to do a regional package, that's for sure.
Even in the town of Assiniboia, we've got a art gallery that is second to none, and people are actually traveling from Regina now to see the Cherniac Art Gallery. And so you can tell people, or I tell people that used to make fun of Saskatchewan, now they're all ears when you start talking about Saskatchewan and telling them what there is here to see and what there is to do.
Situated 70 kilometers west of Swift Current on the Trans-Canada, Tompkins is a quaint community with a strong community spirit. The hometown of Gus Wickstrom, the community holds its history dear. Any visitor to Tompkins cannot go without visiting the Saad House, a recreated structure that details how early settlers lived in the area. Built in 1980 to celebrate the Tompkins homecoming by Ernest Wickstrom and his friend Merle Olson, along with grandsons Robin and Jeff Woodward, the project was a lifelong dream of Ernest. The Sod House now serves as a tribute to the past pioneer spirit and a legacy for future generations to enjoy. Still standing after 35 years, the Sod House continues to draw tourists in while educating them on the important pioneer history of all of southwest Saskatchewan. Sitting north of Gull Lake and northwest of Swift Current, Cabri is a small community with a lot going for it. Created in 1912, the same year as the Cabri Ferry started operation on the North Saskatchewan River, the town earned its name thanks to the Métis voyageurs, who thought the local pronghorns looked like goats, and called them by the French word Cabri. The hometown of Bobby Gimby, the man who created the official song of Canada's centennial year, Canada, the community has a large museum that highlights the history of the entire area. The museum is one of the best small-town museums in southwest Saskatchewan, with many artifacts from the town's past. The surrounding countryside of the community is devoted to agriculture, with many thriving family farms that have been operating for decades. Nearby, you will find Cabri Regional Park, situated along the banks of the South Saskatchewan River. Each year, hundreds of people come out to the park to enjoy the wonderful scenery and quiet setting.
I moved to Val Marie because Saskatoon was getting ever increasingly more expensive and therefore hard for an artist to manage. And Val Marie has this wonderful setting, a very nice community, very welcoming community, and a much more artist-friendly cost of living. I like the fact that people pitch in. I like the volunteer ethic, that everything that is here because someone or a group of people have decided that it will be here, and they're putting their personal time and commitment into making it that way. And I just like that feeling of everybody being committed to something, or in many cases, several somethings.
Eco Museum is kind of a new project that's being started in Saskatchewan. So it's a pilot project. We haven't really established much. But what we have done is we got a consultant to come in last year, and he kind of helped us sit down and brainstorm what we wanted in our Eco Museum and what we thought was most important to relay to visitors when they come. So we took those components, which was ranching, landscape, wildlife, and the night sky, and we tried to just update this space here and make it a little more open, a little more inviting, and to incorporate that idea of eco-museums into this space. So we did keep a lot of the ranching stuff that was already here, and we just kind of changed around what we had and added some new items. We also have an art gallery in this space, and what we've tried to focus on is to keep the idea of an eco-museum in our minds when we're trying to pick which artists to have on display. So the one we have right now kind of talks about the history of women in southern Saskatchewan. So we thought that was really applicable to the Eco Museum. And the idea of an Eco Museum is to have the sense of culture, the sense of place, and try to relay that to visitors when they come, so they have a better understanding of not just artifacts of the area, but the actual true history and people's lives, and to relate more to them personally and understand the relationships of the area.
And Val Marie is a real friendly town. You know, it don't matter where you go on the street yourself, you go on the street, they'll talk to you no matter if you go in the bar or where you're at. It's a farm, you know, cowboy country. I don't know, I think there's a good future for Val Marie. Maybe if you took that park out of here, there'd be nothing here. Nothing. That park is doing good because the ranchers were up here, like that Dixon, that was a big pasture, and he said by the time we don't get as much water, we don't get much of a flood here. And he said, well, he said, you run 7 cows to a quarter of land. By the time I'd get everything paid, he says, it ain't that much. So they sold to the park and retired, and everybody's happy. And they got buffaloes there, and they've got lots of stuff there. Yeah, like they built a campground there, you know, in the morning I'd go out there and I worked there, and I'd meet people and they'd say, they were from China, and they said, what all happened to the trees here? I said, there was never no trees. I just about told them, well, we all cut them down. I said, no, there was no trees here. That's why they call it Grasslands Park. You know, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, we got people moving in here steady.
That's very nice.
And everything's working real good. We get tourists from all over the country, Germany and all over, and they're coming to visit the park here. We got lots of people from Germany, all over the country.
It's your exploring park. If you want to see stuff here, you're going to have to hike out and see it. It offers amazing viewpoints. 19 different species at risk, which is really hard to find in other parks, as well as just the only prairie national park that protects prairie landscapes. So we're pretty lucky that way. Before we put up all this nice stuff for them to scratch on, this is what they use. This is a glacial rock that was deposited here over 10,000 years ago. When the last glacial ice melt came through, and bison of today, bison of 500 years ago, use this. So you can, even if you feel it, you can see that it's quite smoothed off, and you can see their footprints where they've come in here. So they'll dig their front foot in, and they'll just push their shoulder into it, and they'll just dig out all the fur that they don't want there anymore. And interesting thing about the fur is we've actually seen our bird populations increase because they're able to use this fur in their nests. It keeps their eggs warmer. It also has a distinctive smell. So it has the bison smell to it, and it'll actually discourage predators from coming around. So our songbird population has increased for sure. All right, so we're on the lower half of the Continental Divide. So this is the river that goes down south into the States and connects with the Missouri River, which goes all the way down to Mexico. So kind of an important part of the landscape because it's one of the only water sources. So while you feel like I'm lying today because you see water everywhere, usually this is the only water source for animals to use, for humans to use, anything like that. So the last couple of years it has been higher than normal, and you can see parts of the bank where it's been eaten out by floods that have come through. And we're actually using it for our programming now. So we have actually a kayaking program that we are able to do on the Frenchman River. And it's just a different aspect of the park because you're pretty much enclosed in an area, and you can see a whole bunch of different creatures down there. We have otters, beavers, ducks, tons of different things, and all the water birds too. So so the only thing we offered before was at that Belza day use area, and people could pull their campers in, they could pull their tents in, you know, and just camp there. It got really crowded as more and more people found out, and there just wasn't anything we could offer them there besides a great viewpoint, bathrooms. That's it. So and I mean, we're a national park. We wanted to step up our game a little bit, and this was many, many years in the making, this project. So yeah, it's the Frenchman Valley Campground. The main reason they use this area is it was a disturbed area. So this field back here and then well into the half of the campground here was disturbed. So it wasn't native prairie. It had invasive species in it. So we're like, hey, it's kind of a perfect spot to build it. The other thing is that they wanted to build it in an area that you couldn't see when you looked out on the landscape. So you didn't see this place till you rounded the corner, right? So you can go up on that hill and look out that way and not even see down here. You'll see when we go further down as well that when we get to the buildings, you can't even see the campground. So it's kind of in a perfect spot. There's 20 sites. 3 of them are electrical, and we're looking into making more of them electrical after that. We also offer teepee camping on the far side. And this whole fenced area keeps the bison out, and it actually goes right down to the river. So if anybody wanted to camp further back in there, you can do that as well. And they are a little bit, they do get beaten up by the wind around this area. So this is one of the more intact ones. That one's got a rip over there, but they're still fine. It's just doesn't look as pretty. We do get our school groups that'll come out and stay in them in May and June. But we do tend to get more visitors and people that, with their families that are out of school and stuff like that, that'll want to come and stay in the teepees in July and August. So. Lots of people want to come here and see the bison. Just the exploring aspect. We have backcountry campers that'll go out and pitch a tent and just camp out in the middle of the prairie. People that want to explore via hiking. We have horse riders that come through here because it's one of the best ways to explore the park is on horseback. It's something different. Like I'm gonna say that a bunch today. It's different. People are just finding out about it now. It's one of the 2 national parks in Saskatchewan, so PA or Grasslands, I guess.
In the small artistic community of Eastend, located 20 minutes west of Shaunavon, you can take a step back into the past. Not the recent past or the ancient past, but the fossil past. Situated in the Frenchman River Valley, Eastend has become the home of some of the most important fossil finds in Canadian history. No fossil find was more important than that of Scotty, the most complete T-Rex skeleton ever found in Canada. Discovered in 1994 by a local teacher who had joined paleontologists on a dig, the T-Rex Discovery Center outside of the town was built around the discovery. The entire center is operated by the Royal Saskatchewan Museum and was officially opened on May 30th, 2003. Inside, you will also have the Royal Saskatchewan Museum Fossil Station. Today, you can take a trip back into the past of the local area and see many of the important specimens of dinosaurs and early mammals discovered in the cliffs that surround Eastend. From learning about the dinosaurs that once walked through the area, to the ways the landscape has changed here, the T-Rex Center in Eastend is the perfect place for any budding paleontologist to visit.
Well, I think that people need to, for maybe not everybody understands the importance and significance of the building to the town. Mr. Wong Guy, of course, during the Spanish flu epidemic in the early 1900s, played a real pivotal role in one of the worst eras that our community has ever seen. When the Spanish flu went through, town council had to declare a state of emergency. The school had to be converted to a hospital and they needed a cook. Mr. Wong Guy stepped up to fill that role, despite the fact at the time many people wouldn't, because they were afraid themselves of the seriousness of the epidemic. And he cared for the people by preparing meals through the whole ordeal by himself, which was very selfless. Mr. Wong went on after that to become a shoemaker, built this place, stood in this community as a local business for many, many years until about 1978, and he had retired and moved away. Now I think the opportunity for the community is to have this very important building here in our community declare a heritage property. So I want to unveil our plaque then, what we have done, and Gull Lake Second Heritage Property.
Yeah, but definitely. Well, everything on your right you can touch, and everything you can look at. We just ask that you don't touch anything on the countertops or in the back. That's about it. But yeah, everything runs. It's we just temporarily turn that off, but it still works and everything. We just need to fix this belt and get it started here. But if you have any questions, please ask.
It is a small town with a big love of the past. Ogema, a town of 320 people and located 115 kilometers south of Regina, is a place where history truly comes alive. First settled in 1908, it became a town in 1912. Many buildings from the early days of the community still stand. Main Street of Ogema is lined with buildings that represent the past, including the fire hall and fire wall. Other buildings include several stores, the Ogema Theatre, and the Ogema Meat Market. Main Street is not the only place to find history in the community. The amazing Deep South Pioneer Museum, first created in 1977, has accumulated over 30 restored buildings and over 1,000 pieces of farm equipment. Each year, on the second Sunday in July, an annual Museum Day is held, with rope-making demonstrations, threshing, and blacksmithing. The 1912 CPR train station is also a major landmark for the community. The original station was built in 1912 and sold for scrap in the 1960s. But in the 2000s, a committee found a station from the same era and had it transported to Ogema. Over the next 7 years and thousands of hours of labor, the new station was opened in 2009. If you love small town history, Ogema is the place to go. Saskatchewan is an important stopping point for many bird species that migrate through. One of the most important stopping points for the birds is located near Chaplin, where one of the largest deposits of sodium sulfate can be found in North America. The nearby Chaplin Lake is the second largest saline water body in Canada and a Western Hemisphere shorebird reserve network. Only 35 sites in the Western Hemisphere are classified as such, and only 5 are found in Canada. Roughly 30 species with a peak of 67,000 birds in a day can be found there during the peak season. As many as 50,000 sanderlings, or 50% of the population in the Western Hemisphere, have been counted in a single day. Located nearby in Chaplin, you can find the Chaplin Bird Center, which offers a wealth of information about the birds and the saline lake that dominates the area. Bus tours are available throughout the summer, running from May to September. For any bird lover, Chaplin is the perfect place to visit and see the many birds that come through the area each year. There are many communities in southwest Saskatchewan that have a strong French background, giving a unique mix of French and English cultures to many communities. Ponteix is one such community. Having celebrated its 100th anniversary in 2014, the community has a long history to go back on. The community was a popular stopping point for the First Nations for many years, and the thousands of arrowheads found attest to that fact. The community is also home to Mo, a dinosaur that was found in the 1990s and now serves as a mascot for the community. A large statue of the dinosaur is also on hand along the highway that runs past Ponteix. The local Heritage Museum is home to a huge collection of First Nation artifacts, as well as many fossils that have been found. The heritage of Ponteix is celebrated throughout the community, but the true defining aspect of Ponteix is found at the Notre Dame Catholic Church. The church, built in 1929, features twin steeples and houses a large wood carving of the Virgin Mary that dates back 400 years. The statue came to Canada in 1909 and was saved from a fire in the previous church in 1923. Once covered in pure gold, it was saved by peasants during the French Revolution when many religious artifacts were destroyed or melted down. The church is a true wonder and rivals the churches seen in many major cities. It is a wonder to behold from the inside, especially when the choir is singing and the sound echoes across the walls. We have visited many places on our journey throughout southwest Saskatchewan. There are many that we could not include, but one we had to was the unique and beautiful oasis of Pine Cree Regional Park. Located near Eastend, this park is nestled between hills, and despite being in Saskatchewan, you will feel as though you are driving into British Columbia as you descend down the hill into the park. Full of pine trees, it is one of the most popular spots in the southwest to camp. With a gentle stream running through it, it is a tranquil place of beauty and relaxation. The hills rising around the park give you a great view of the surrounding area, as well as a hermit cave to explore. Small compared to other parks in the southwest, it nonetheless packs a lot into it. Campers can be found throughout the summer, and it is a popular place for large gatherings. Historical markers tell the history of the area, and there are plenty of paths to take to explore the wondrous natural beauty found in Pine Cree. Located near the border with the United States, Frontier is a wonderful community that is still going strong after all these years. Sitting near Highway 18 and a few kilometers from Climax, Frontier is home to 351 people, a number that has risen by 24% since 2006. Located in Frontier, you can enjoy the Frontier and District Golf Course, an excellent 9-hole course that has become one of the hallmarks of Saskatchewan golf. To the east, you can visit the Grasslands National Park, and to the west, you can visit Old Man on His Back, a nature preserve that is protecting one of the last remaining areas of natural prairie in the country. Frontier is a quaint community that is worth the visit. Southwest Saskatchewan is a place of wonder and beauty. In this film, we have talked with the people who call it home, learned of the history of the cultures and towns that now dot the landscape, discovered the many towns and villages that line the roads crisscrossing through the area, and seen the wonderful landscape and beauty of this small corner of the province. At the beginning of this film, we asked, what is Southwest Saskatchewan? We can answer that it is all things to the people who live here. It is a land of towering pines and dizzying landscapes. It is a land of innovation, and it is a land of tradition. It is a place where you can explore for an entire summer and still not see everything. You can see the history of the First Nations going back centuries, drive into the prehistoric past with the dinosaurs, and get lost on the many trails and paths that will take you off the beaten path. Southwest Saskatchewan is not the Trans-Canada. That is only part of it, a line that goes through. Off that path, there is so much to see and discover. Driving through, you rob yourself of the chance to see an amazing landscape that is constantly changing. You rob yourself of the chance to visit the small towns that continue to thrive in a changing time, with museums and landmarks that celebrate and preserve the past even as the world moves ever faster into the future. You rob yourself of the chance to talk to the people who have called this place home for decades, who are still finding places to discover after all this time. What is Southwest Saskatchewan? It is a slice of heaven. Of the small corner of the province. Should that be this small corner of the province?
Yeah.
All right. I'll be back there.
Great. Second guessing me right on, right on camera.
Well, now I'm paranoid.
Don't hit the red one.
Yeah!